Something happened in Indiana. Something powerful enough to shake the entire foundation of women's basketball. It didn't take place under bright arena lights or during a viral highlight reel. It happened behind closed doors, in a quiet boardroom where billionaires and executives decided what the future of the WNBA would look like. And at the center of it all was one name: Caitlin Clark. The same rookie who broke records, packed arenas, and turned women's basketball into must-watch television might have just triggered a silent revolution inside her own franchise. Because when one player becomes bigger than the game itself, control becomes the most valuable currency. Whispers began spreading online, rumors of meetings, mandates, and tension behind the scenes, suggesting that the Indiana Fever might no longer belong to their coach or even their front office. Some say it now belongs to the player wearing number 22. And if those whispers are even half true, it means the WNBA isn't just witnessing a new era, it's watching the birth of a new power structure. From the moment Caitlin Clark stepped onto a WNBA court, the atmosphere changed. You could feel it. The buzz in the crowd, the camera flashes, the sense that something historic was unfolding in real time. This wasn't just another rookie debut. This was a cultural shift happening right in front of us. Overnight, tickets that once went unsold were suddenly impossible to find. Stadiums that struggled to fill seats became standing room only. Every time she pulled up from deep, from those impossible logo-range shots that made her a college legend, it wasn't just basketball. It was an event. Every dribble felt like a moment the league had been waiting decades for. Before Clark, the WNBA was growing, yes, but quietly. It had loyal fans and strong players, yet it rarely pierced through the noise of mainstream sports culture. Then came Caitlin, confident, unfiltered, and armed with a shot that defied logic. She wasn't just playing the game, she was rewriting its rhythm. Kids started mimicking her form in driveways, men's basketball fans started tuning in just to see what all the hype was about, and networks realized they weren't dealing with a typical prospect. They were dealing with a phenomenon. The numbers told the story before the headlines did. Her first games broke viewership records that had stood untouched for years. Merch sales skyrocketed. Her jersey became one of the fastest-selling items in women's sports history. Sponsors lined up, broadcasts doubled down, and suddenly every conversation about women's basketball led back to one name. Caitlin Clark had done what marketing campaigns and rebrands couldn't. She made people care. But behind the celebration, something else was brewing. When one player starts drawing that kind of attention, when her presence alone can shift revenue, ratings, and relevance, she stops being just an athlete. She becomes an asset, a brand, a business on two legs. And in professional sports, when a brand becomes that valuable, it doesn't take long before the people upstairs start paying attention. Because when a single player starts moving the money, everyone in the building starts wondering who's really in charge. Most fans think of the Indiana Fever as just another basketball team, a small market franchise trying to rebuild, develop young talent, and climb back into relevance. But that's only what you see on the surface. Behind the jerseys and the courtside smiles is one of the most powerful sports ownership groups in America, a family whose influence stretches far beyond the boundaries of the WNBA. The Fever don't just belong to Indiana, they belong to the Simons, the same billionaire dynasty that controls the Indiana Pacers and Simon Property Group, the largest shopping mall empire in the United States. This isn't a mom-and-pop sports operation. This is a corporate machine with deep pockets, deep connections, and an even deeper understanding of how to turn attention into profit. At the head of that empire sits Herb Simon, a business legend now in his 90s who built his fortune turning retail into real estate dominance. But Herb hasn't been hands-on in years. The day-to-day power, the real decision-making, belongs to his son, Steve Simon. And Steve doesn't do interviews. He doesn't chase the spotlight or make public statements. Because people who hold real power don't need to. They make moves quietly. And by the time the public notices, the decision's already been made. When Caitlin Clark joined the Fever, Steve Simon didn't just see a new player. He saw a once-in-a-generation marketing engine, the kind of athlete who could breathe life into a franchise that had spent years floating under the radar. He saw viral moments, sold-out arenas, and an opportunity to position Indiana at the center of a national conversation. But when the excitement started to cool, when ticket sales plateaued and the viral clips slowed down, that's when the questions started. Because for a billionaire, declining numbers aren't just disappointing, they're unacceptable. And when billionaires start asking why the numbers are dropping, someone usually gets called into a meeting. A meeting where polite questions turn into quiet commands. And according to emerging whispers from inside the Fever organization, one of those meetings might have already happened. One that could explain every strange decision fans have noticed this season. The Simon family didn't build a billion-dollar empire by letting emotion dictate business. They built it by protecting their investments. And in 2025, no investment in Indiana sports is bigger than Caitlin Clark. Which is why when the Fever system started limiting her spotlight, when the team stopped looking like her team, some say the people at the very top decided to take control.
It started as a whisper, a rumor tucked away in fan forums, live streams, and half-deleted tweets. But the more people looked into it, the harder it became to ignore. According to multiple insiders and online reports, a private meeting took place deep inside Pacers Sports and Entertainment headquarters, a meeting that could reshape the entire direction of the Indiana Fever. The alleged attendees: Steve Simon, the billionaire vice chairman of the organization, Stephanie White, the Fever's head coach, and a handful of top executives, all summoned to the same room for what insiders described as a strategic reset. What was said in that room has never been confirmed publicly, but if the reports are accurate, even halfway accurate, it explains a lot about what's been happening on the court. The story goes like this. The team's numbers had started to dip. Ticket sales weren't matching early season highs, social media engagement slowed, and for a franchise built around the most marketable athlete in women's sports, that was a red flag. So Steve Simon allegedly made a call, not to the players, not to the GM, but directly to the coach. The message, according to the rumor, was simple. This is Caitlin Clark's team now. Not a suggestion, not a motivational speech, a directive, a corporate mandate from the top. If that conversation really took place, it wasn't just a coaching discussion, it was a transfer of power. Because in professional sports, when ownership steps into basketball strategy, that's not business as usual, that's a signal. It means the brand is taking priority over the playbook. And in this case, the brand was a 22-year-old rookie who had become the heartbeat of an entire league. Think about that dynamic for a second. You've got a head coach known for discipline, structure, and team-first basketball suddenly being told that the franchise must orbit around one player. You've got executives caught in the middle, trying to balance short-term buzz with long-term vision. And you've got a billionaire owner watching from above, quietly measuring everything in numbers, revenue, and reach. It's the kind of internal collision that doesn't stay hidden for long. Reports began to surface of philosophical differences between the front office and the coaching staff. Public statements stayed professional, but the tone shifted. You could see it in interviews, in subtle word choices, in how certain questions were dodged. Something behind the curtain had changed. And though no one could prove the meeting happened, the timing of everything that followed, the lineup adjustments, the new marketing focus, the sudden pivot back toward Clark-heavy plays, made the rumor almost impossible to dismiss. Behind closed doors, it wasn't just about basketball anymore. It was about control. Who has it, who's losing it, and who's willing to fight for it. And if those whispers are true, that quiet meeting in Indianapolis may have set the stage for one of the most significant power shifts the WNBA has ever seen. Stephanie White had a plan. When she accepted the job as head coach of the Indiana Fever, she brought with her a blueprint, one built on fundamentals, teamwork, and discipline. Her system was about structure, not stardom. She believed in balanced possessions, collective defense, and a rhythm that valued execution over flash. To her, winning basketball wasn't about one name on the back of the jersey, it was about the logo on the front. But the moment Caitlin Clark walked into the building, that philosophy was tested. Because Clark wasn't just another player, she was a movement. Every shot she took became a headline. Every highlight clip became a viral reel. The Fever, once an afterthought in league standings, suddenly found themselves at the center of a national spotlight. And while most franchises would have killed for that kind of attention, it came with a price. The louder the spotlight got, the harder it became to run things quietly. White's system demanded patience. Clark's presence demanded freedom. Those two ideas don't coexist easily. As the season progressed, fans started noticing the difference. The deep threes that once defined Caitlyn's game started disappearing. Her shot attempts dropped. The offense slowed. What had once been electric and unpredictable began to feel restrained. Sure, the Fever looked more organized, more controlled, but the magic, the spontaneity that made Clark Clark started fading. And when the team's playstyle changed, so did the reaction. Viewership dipped. The viral moments dried up. The same fans who couldn't stop talking about the Fever a few months earlier began asking questions. Where was the swagger, the confidence, the chaos that made every game feel like must-watch TV? Even people outside the sport could sense it. Something about the Fever felt muted. That's when the tension reportedly started to build behind the scenes. White was coaching to win. Ownership, according to the rumors, wanted a show. The Simon family saw the numbers, the ticket revenue, the sponsorships, the media buzz, all of it tied directly to Caitlin Clark's energy. And when those numbers began slipping, that wasn't just a basketball concern. It was a business emergency. To White, basketball was about systems and teamwork. To Simon, it was about economics and entertainment. Neither was wrong, but both were playing different games. And in professional sports, when business collides with basketball, business almost always wins. Still, White didn't back down. She stood by her system, believing it could mold the Fever into a long-term contender, even if that meant slowing the hype train for a while. But billionaires don't wait. They don't tolerate eventually. And according to insiders, that's when the corporate patience started running out.
It's the oldest conflict in sports, the strategist versus the investor. One fights for process, the other fights for product. And somewhere in between sits the player caught in the middle, trying to carry a franchise while navigating politics far above her pay grade. Caitlin Clark didn't ask for a power struggle. She just wanted to play. But by the time she realized what was happening around her, the line between basketball and business had already blurred. Whispers turned into speculation. Speculation turned into headlines. And soon everyone was talking about the same thing, the tension inside Indiana's front office. It started with small details that fans picked up on. A sudden shift in interviews, a coach's tone that seemed a little more guarded, a few cryptic posts from Fever insiders hinting at philosophical differences. Nobody said it directly, but the energy around the franchise felt uneasy. Then came the rumor that changed everything. According to an insider who claimed to have knowledge of internal discussions, later echoed across podcasts and fan streams, Steve Simon himself had called a private meeting with Stephanie White and top Fever executives. The purpose? To make one thing crystal clear. From this point forward, the Indiana Fever are Caitlin Clark's team. Now let's be clear, none of this has been confirmed by the organization, but even if part of that claim holds truth, it explains a lot, because from that point on, the tone of everything around the team began to shift. The messaging got more controlled. The media appearances became more focused on Clark. The entire marketing push started revolving around one image, the rookie superstar who had become the face of the league. Insiders say that moment created a clear divide inside the building. On one side, the ownership and marketing teams, laser-focused on protecting their billion-dollar investment. On the other, Stephanie White and her coaching staff, still trying to hold on to a system built on teamwork, structure, and control. And right in the middle of that silent storm stood Caitlin Clark, the player everyone was fighting over. Multiple reports suggested White pushed back, strongly. She believed her system was working, the team was improving, chemistry was building, and for the first time in years, the Fever looked competitive. But ownership wasn't looking at win-loss columns. They were looking at engagement graphs and revenue charts.
According to the rumors, when White voiced her objection, Steve Simon allegedly responded with a line that's been whispered around WNBA circles ever since. "You don't have to like it. That's just the way it is." And that's when things, reportedly, started to crack. The timing matched too perfectly to ignore. Right after that supposed meeting window, fans began to notice contradictions. In interviews, White praised Kelsey Mitchell as the offensive anchor of the team, yet the Fever's official promotions and social content increasingly spotlighted Clark alone. The franchise's messaging seemed split between two directions: the coach's vision of balance and the corporation's vision of branding. Then came the silence. No denials, no clarifications, just a wave of no comments and vague reassurances about alignment and trust in the process. But if everything was fine, why did it feel like everyone in the organization was walking on eggshells? Behind the scenes, reports hinted at growing friction, not just between White and Simon, but among the staff themselves. Some allegedly believed White's days were numbered, while others admired her refusal to fold under pressure. The rumor mill exploded, with fans debating whether the Fever were on the verge of a quiet overhaul. And while none of it was publicly confirmed, the patterns lined up a little too neatly. The change in tone, the tighter media control, and the new Clark-centric branding push. Through it all, Caitlin Clark kept her focus on basketball. But those close to the league couldn't help but wonder, did she realize how much of the franchise's future was now tied to her name? Whether she liked it or not, her success wasn't just about winning games anymore. It was about keeping the business alive. Because if the whispers are true, the Indiana Fever weren't just adjusting their strategy. They were redefining who held the power. And when power shifts this quietly, the fallout rarely stays hidden for long. Let's be brutally honest about something most teams won't say out loud. In today's sports world, winning isn't always what pays the bills. Attention does. And no one in women's basketball has commanded attention like Caitlin Clark. She's not just a player, she's an economy unto herself. Her name trends within minutes. Her games dominate TV ratings. Her jersey sales rival those of entire franchises. For the first time in years, the WNBA wasn't fighting for coverage, it was the coverage itself. And that shift wasn't luck. It was the Caitlin Clark effect in full force. When Clark entered the league, ticket sales exploded. Merchandise flew off shelves. Every highlight clip became a viral moment. The Fever, once struggling to draw local crowds, suddenly had fans showing up hours before tip-off, not just in Indiana, but in every arena she played. ESPN, Bleacher Report, and sports podcasts that rarely touched WNBA content were now leading with her name. She was, in every measurable way, good for business. But that kind of momentum creates pressure, and pressure always finds its way to the top. When Clark's minutes dropped or her shot attempts declined, the numbers responded immediately. Ratings dipped, engagement slowed. Sponsorship deals that once felt guaranteed suddenly needed reassurance. The Fever's ownership didn't need analytics to see what was happening. The financials told the story in real time. To them, it was simple math. When Clark was unleashed, the line went up. When she was reined in, it flattened. That's not a coaching opinion, that's data. And for a family like the Simons, who built their empire by tracking trends, margins, and consumer behavior, that kind of drop-off wasn't just concerning, it was a threat. Because what they had wasn't just a basketball team. They had a brand built around a 22-year-old phenom, and that brand was printing money.
The WNBA has always faced an uphill battle for mainstream relevance, but Clark's rise changed that almost overnight. For the first time, the league had a figure who could bridge the gap between die-hard fans and casual sports viewers. Every major network wanted her games. Every sponsor wanted her face. For the league, she was the key to unlocking a new audience. For Indiana, she was the lifeline that turned their franchise into a business powerhouse. That's why, according to insiders, Steve Simon's alleged directive made perfect sense from a corporate standpoint. When you have an asset that valuable, you don't treat her like a piece of the puzzle. You build the puzzle around her. Every system, every marketing move, every dollar of investment becomes centered on that one person. Because in business, especially billion-dollar business, value dictates vision. And that's where the philosophical war began to make sense. Stephanie White wanted to protect the system. Ownership wanted to protect the star. The two goals might sound similar on paper, but they couldn't be more different in practice. White's mission was to create a sustainable, team-driven identity. Simon's mission was to keep the spotlight burning as brightly as possible for as long as possible. And when those priorities collide, someone has to give. In the old WNBA, a coach might have had the final say on basketball decisions. But the new WNBA, the post-Caitlin Clark era, plays by different rules. When one player can single-handedly reshape a league's audience and revenue stream, the traditional power structure starts to bend. Suddenly, it's not about who's running the offense, it's about who's running the business. To the Simon family, this wasn't personal, it was practical. If the Fever were going to stay relevant, profitable, and nationally watched, Clark had to be at the center of everything, whether the coach agreed or not. Because in their eyes, basketball might win games, but branding wins empires. And that's what the Fever had become, not just a team, but a business built around a single star. But that kind of setup comes with risk. When a franchise becomes that dependent on one person, the balance shifts. Every victory and every controversy tie back to her. Every locker room conversation becomes a headline. Every coaching choice becomes a debate. And for the Indiana Fever, that delicate balance between basketball purity and corporate necessity may determine how long this new empire actually lasts. At this point, the question isn't if something changed inside the Indiana Fever, it's who changed it. Because every move since that rumored meeting seems to point to a quiet shift in control. On paper, the power structure still looks the same. Herb Simon at the top, Steve Simon calling the shots, Stephanie White coaching, and Caitlin Clark leading on the floor. But if you look closer, you'll notice something different. A new gravitational pull forming around one person. And whether anyone admits it or not, that person is Caitlin Clark. Ownership might hold the contracts, the coach might draw up the plays, but when one player's influence becomes the reason executives meet, policies shift, and entire marketing strategies are rewritten, that's not just stardom, that's power. The kind of power that rewires an organization from the inside out. Fans began noticing subtle signs that the balance had changed. Press releases felt more curated, more Clark-centric. Interviews that once focused on team development suddenly revolved around Caitlin's impact. The Fever's social media feeds, which used to highlight multiple players, quietly became a one-woman show. It wasn't malicious, it was strategic. Because when one name brings in the money, everything else becomes secondary. And yet the silence from within the organization was almost deafening. Nobody denied the rumors outright. Nobody came forward to say that meeting never happened. Instead, everyone tiptoed around the topic, hiding behind corporate buzzwords like alignment, vision, and shared goals. It's the kind of silence that speaks louder than a press conference ever could. Because in business, especially sports business, silence usually means the story isn't wrong. It's just inconvenient. If these reports are true, it means Indiana's franchise hierarchy has been rewritten. The traditional triangle of owner, coach, player has shifted into something new: owner, player, league. The coach in that setup becomes more of an operator than a leader, tasked with managing the optics as much as the offense. For Stephanie White, that's a nightmare scenario. For the Simon family, it's good business. And for Caitlin Clark, it's both a crown and a burden. Because being the face of the franchise sounds glamorous until you realize what it really means. Every win becomes proof of your power. Every loss becomes your fault. Every teammate who struggles, every fan who criticizes the system, every journalist who digs for dirt, all of it circles back to you.
And the larger Clark's brand grows, the more it overshadows everything around her. This isn't new in sports. We've seen it before. Jordan with the Bulls, LeBron with the Cavaliers, Brady with the Patriots. But the difference here is scale. The WNBA has never had a player who is the product. The league's identity, its sponsorships, its national interest, all of it now orbit around a single player in a single city. That's a lot of power to hand to anyone, no matter how talented they are. And that brings us back to the core question: who really runs the Indiana Fever?
Is it Steve Simon, the billionaire with the final say and the money to move mountains? Is it Stephanie White, the coach fighting to preserve her basketball vision amid corporate interference? Or is it Caitlin Clark, the rookie whose stardom forced everyone to rewrite the rules? The truth is, maybe it's all three. Maybe Indiana has entered an era where business, basketball, and branding have merged into one, where decisions aren't made by authority, but by leverage. And right now, the person holding the most leverage isn't sitting in the owner's suite or on the sidelines. She's standing on the court, holding the ball. So when people ask who's really running the Fever, maybe the better question is this: what happens when one player becomes too big for any system to contain? Because that's the reality Indiana is facing, and the rest of the league is watching closely. The dust in Indiana hasn't settled. It's still swirling. Inside those quiet offices and glossy press conferences, decisions are being made that could shape not just the Fever's future, but the entire WNBA's direction. Because what's happening in Indiana isn't an isolated story anymore. It's the blueprint for how modern sports will operate when a single player becomes bigger than the league itself. If the rumors are true, and ownership has indeed declared this to be Caitlin Clark's franchise, then next season won't just be about basketball. It'll be about alignment. Can Stephanie White adapt, evolve, and rebuild her system around one player's star power? Or will she quietly become another casualty in a battle between philosophy and profit? Coaches in this league rarely lose because of wins or losses. They lose because the business shifts underneath them. And right now, that business has a name and a number: 22. For the players, the change is just as complicated. Veterans like Kelsey Mitchell and Aaliyah Boston have carved their own identities, leaders who carried the Fever through lean years before Clark arrived. Now they're navigating a new reality where every play, every interview, every moment feeds into a machine designed to amplify someone else's. Some will adapt, some will resist, and some will quietly start looking for the next opportunity. Because when a franchise becomes a one-star system, the gravity gets heavy, and not everyone survives the orbit. Behind the scenes, the marketing gears are already turning. Executives are reportedly exploring new sponsorship packages built around Clark's brand, not the Fever's logo, not the WNBA's crest, but her name. Expect more solo campaigns, more national appearances, more global partnerships, positioning her as the face of the modern women's game. The strategy is clear: double down, scale up, and let the spotlight burn as bright as possible. The risk? Spotlights don't last forever. But here's the thing: Caitlin Clark didn't ask for this. She didn't request to be the centerpiece of a billion-dollar debate. She earned her spotlight through talent, passion, and relentless drive. Yet now, every move she makes will be analyzed through a corporate lens. Every off night becomes a ratings issue. Every victory becomes a business success. It's a weight that even the most seasoned athletes struggle to carry. But Clark, she's not backing away. She's leaning in. And maybe that's why this story feels so much bigger than basketball. Because what's unfolding in Indiana isn't just a sports narrative. It's a case study in power. A young woman reshaping an entire industry without even meaning to. Billionaires rewriting their playbooks to keep up. Coaches fighting to preserve integrity in a world run by algorithms and engagement graphs. It's the new reality of professional sports, where attention is currency and stars are the stock market. The real question now isn't whether Caitlin Clark can handle the pressure. She's proven that part already. The question is whether the system around her, the team, the ownership, even the league itself can handle her. Because once a player changes the business, you can't go back to the way things were. The game, the brand, the culture, they all evolve with her. So as Indiana prepares for another season, one truth stands tall. The Fever will rise or fall on how well they balance basketball with business. If they get it right, they could redefine women's sports forever. If they get it wrong, they could fracture a franchise built on the most promising star the league has ever seen. Either way, everyone will be watching. Because when one player becomes the heartbeat of an entire league, the story doesn't end when the buzzer sounds. It's only just beginning.